Okay. Topic of discussion. Why being authentic is 100% essential and non-negotiable in 2025. That's the main shtick of today, and probably many other discussions we'll have going forward this year. But before, it has seemed like more of an optional endeavour because there were other ways to communicate. Now I'm just seeing less and less effectiveness for anything else that isn't authentic, just because of the way the world's going and the way the internet's evolving, which is two completely different discussions. But in your mind, authenticity, why do we need to care? Give us the pitch.
Well, I mean, I guess because I can't show up any other way other than me, and it's really hard for me to pretend. Otherwise, I would have practiced having a New Zealand accent so people wouldn't ask me where I'm from all the time so that I sound like my passport, right? If
Yeah.
I if I actually like I wish that I didn't if I that I wasn't so authentic. And I also wouldn't offend so many people, I'm sure also in my past, less in my present. But the reason why I find it so interesting personally, aside from, being able to connect with like-minded people, I think that when you're truly authentic with your with who you are, with what you want to accomplish, with your goals, everything just works better and you show up as a happier person.
Mm.
I don't
Yeah.
know. What do you think?
Yeah. Workplace wise, we're starting around that. I mean, like corporate culture has been the same for a very long time. And there's been people like ourselves that haven't been able to meld with it at all. But I think there's definitely been some shifts with work from home culture and then coming back to the office. I think a lot of it was brought back in, to be honest with you, from how that liberation felt at home, been brought into workplaces now. And actually it's kind of needed to feel somewhat comfortable, because otherwise you just feel so unbelievably uncomfortable all the time if you can't show up as you, with common sense applied. And I think that's the only difference. Authenticity is in with common sense applied, if
Well,
if you have it to dish out. But yeah,
well, well, when you were talking about, showing up at work and being able to be yourself, the psychological safety, and I know I've talked about it before with Google's Project Aristotle, where they say that the most successful teams are the ones where they rate very highly in psychological safety. So the ability to show up now, whether or not this is for diversity and inclusion perspectives, which obviously is really important, but not fearing retaliation because you have a different idea or you want to challenge something is really important.
yeah, I think change makers are definitely being valued more than they used to. Because change is so needed now, because so many of the tried and true methods, whether it be marketing wise or just the ways of doing business, just aren't working anymore. So new ideas are 100% essential. There's so many staples in our lives that are just being affected. For instance, we're going to use an analogy from sports. The NBA right now, the National Basketball Association for the English people, is struggling in a big way with their viewership. Viewership is tanked majorly because the superstars that created the narratives before are close to retirement, and there hasn't been good enough marketing on the current product on the next generation to pull through the previous numbers, and how the game is played has changed quite a bit, because they just kind of didn't do anything different from let's say the 2010s to now, and it's kind of just slowly been like dying a death a little bit in terms of viewership numbers, because they stuck to the same corporate methodology, because
Mm-hmm.
the product was, they thought it was set in stone, they thought it was fine. And if something as famous as the NBA can struggle as much as it is right now, your businesses can too, and they will do. So yeah, better start getting the idea hat on in 2025, because just being sat on your ass isn't going to do anything, at least in my opinion.
That's really, really great example. And I mean, don't tell my sister that because she's a diehard fan of the Mavericks. But yeah, I had no idea that that was an issue.
Yeah, so many of the fans don't like the way the game is played, because it's almost like there's a solution to wins. Shoot more 3-pointers than the other team. That it's become such a systematic thing that the viewership of how the game is played and the product is now unwatchable for a lot of fans. And everyone has their opinions on why viewership is going down. I think it's a multitude of things, as do most people with common sense on their head. But it's a perfect example of just like, I think I'm too big to fail. And it's not dead yet by any means, but they do need to make some actual changes to the actual game of basketball, which is kind of crazy to think about. Like whether it's rule changes or how the schedule runs or what platform they stream on, something like that, it needs to change. Or we're going to have some big old issues and some bailouts and all that kind of stuff, because UK basketball failed for a very similar way because they just couldn't get viewership up, couldn't get interest. Gaining interest in 2025 is really hard. It requires a hell of a lot of brand risk. If you play too safe, you're probably going to fail, at least over a certain period of time. I mean, that's coming from an experiential marketing, social media point of view.
That's really interesting. I think that, if we're looking at platforms like LinkedIn, and let's talk about small business owners or founders who are trying to get themselves out there. I've had conversations with people who have been like, yeah, I'm trying to think of how I can, share more of my story authentically and without kind of giving too much away. And I think a lot of people think that the fear of judgment is real. So, oh, how are people going to perceive this? Or I remember last year, and this is my biggest regret. Well, no, not my biggest regret, but one of my biggest regrets last year is I posted something on LinkedIn that I felt really good about, because it was basically these naked cyclists riding through London that I caught on this random day, and it filled me with so much like inspiration. And I took a photo of the back of them because I was like, being a founder and putting yourself out there and trying to meet with people or sell your idea that people don't really get. It is like putting yourself out there totally naked for people to judge. And I used that analogy, and obviously I only showed the back of these cyclists. But man, I was so surprised by this very ranty, judgmental comment that I got that was like talking about how that was sexually motivated and it was totally obscene, and as if it was, and I'm sharing this on LinkedIn, which is a professional platform, right? There's no bits showing, and if you judge others, the likelihood of you judging yourself is like 10 times more. So, yeah. And you're probably far more harsh and critical. So anyway, that's my rant. But
yeah, well, my favorite Ted Lasso quote is "Be curious, not judgmental," and I'm sure that's not from Ted Lasso, but anyone who hasn't watched that show, please do. I mean, amazing. People often fear that they'll run into some kind of situation like you did when they post their own content, and I'm just like, you really need to look at it much more as like a business function. And it's quite hard to separate that initially. Once you start posting high volumes of content, like if you try to challenge yourself to post, let's say 3 times a week for 3 months, it's much easier to then separate what fills your comment sections. Well, it still does affect you in some way, especially because that person's obviously, again, triggered, and it's just like, even though I absolutely hate the guy, Elon Musk is the example of how he basically rage baits the entire world daily and remains in the headlines daily. And that's how his business models operate because of the exposure that he gets. If someone's getting angry in your comments, I'm just like, tasty engagement. Let me suckle on your tears. Delicious. Like, I couldn't care less. Like, get more angry at me, please. Like, all you're doing is driving up my engagement, mate. Thank you. So in that sense, once you start looking at it like that, especially when you're not doing something ridiculous or you're not supposed to something racist or something, like, you're like, just chill out, dude. Like, go join the Westboro Baptist Church somewhere else. Like, I don't care. But that's how you need to look at things like that. everyday people now that like LinkedIn has creator mode for a reason. As soon as you turn that creator mode on, you're viewed in the same way as, I don't know, any large business leader would, any Elon Musk or whichever. Yeah, statistically, you have the same statistical view, profile, and posting capabilities that they do. Like, the stuff that gets Elon in headlines every day is the thing that we can just pick up and type away at. And yes, he bought the platform so he could put himself front of mind of everyone. But essentially, he's still using the same tool. We need to think in the same way. I think a lot of people just don't realise that they have to think in that capacity, like they are a brand in their own right. So it's a weird one, and it's an evolution that has happened very quickly, and it's just kind of appeared on people's doorsteps that, oh, I now have to be a content creator. Pretty much. To get exposure for yourself or for your brand, for a small business owner, create controversy, interest, whatever you can. Get out there, get in people's minds that it's appearing in the constant hamster wheel of social media. Do that, you win. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad, usually. Hence why the things that are bad usually get the most views.
Yeah, see, okay. As a high influence in the disc profile, I'm as high D as well, but my high I fears rejection. So actually, that's really hard for me. I don't want to upset people. And anyway, I kind of feel like the most authentic version of me is to be true and kind and all of those things. And I don't want to upset people. But I don't want people who are upset by things that I've posted and unintentionally offended them with. I don't want to let that affect me this year. And I'm going to say things. So I've called out a couple of things. And so when you're talking about posting, so here's a really good, I'd really like to know what measurements of posting on that 3 times a week, because I found myself replying to a couple of posts that I saw. One of them was around the word foreigner, that somebody was talking about Musk being able to, like, Musk is a foreigner, so he shouldn't have anything to do with UK politics. And I really hate that word, because I've been coined with that word, and then so have other people that I know, and I live here and I make my home here. So, and anyway, so I made a couple of comments, which actually got some support, which I thought, oh wow, I wasn't actually saying it for that reason, but I just wanted to kind of draw a different perspective to this topic. Anyway, how would you recommend authentically, and how do you separate what people are posting that's coming off of ChatGPT, for instance, and that just like that's an article that's ChatGPT? Like, how can you tell the difference?
ChatGPT has a lot of obvious signifiers. We've all seen rocket emojis, or those usually the key indicators of, oh, that's AI posted. Sometimes people don't mind if your caption is AI generated.
Yeah, captions we use. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you're using AI to help write your captions to save time, but you've put effort into, let's say, an original graphic or an original photo or original video, that's where I kind of let it slide. Because if you're posting a lot, I can see why you're trying to do that amongst your full-time job, something like that. As long as it actually makes sense and it's not like really just dry, as long as it's still got some of you, right? If that makes sense. If people were just doing AI-generated text posts and image posts, that makes me feel violently ill. Like that is such dead internet theory.
Projectile vomiting.
It just sucks. Like. And for anyone who's not familiar, the dead internet theory is essentially the theory that the internet will eventually eat its own tail, like some kind of mythical snake, where everything you end up seeing will eventually be a bot or an AI or something, where humans essentially have completely disappeared from the equation in some way, shape, or form.
Dead internet.
The dead internet theory, yes. That it was like a Reddit thread from like back in like 2000s internet, and then it's kind of lived on throughout now and become truer and truer the more we use ChatGPT and other things like that. But that's why showing up authentically now can literally just mean you write your caption yourself or you make a video in person. This is why I'm so hot on video content, because I'm not sure how many people really identified the fact that if you're one of the few people who show up consistently in 2025 with video of yourself, that is almost proof that you're a human in a world where you can't tell the difference between this and that anymore. Like AI video generation tech is getting so scarily good that we are almost at the point where we can't tell, almost. There's like very obvious tell sometimes, and sometimes a few images will still get you now, but this is the worst that technology will ever be. It's only going to get better. It's going to become indistinguishable. So if this is why, you know, a lot of brands are fussing and ahhing over, should I do a vlog or a podcast, or but everyone has a podcast. I don't care. You need proof that you're real, almost. This is almost like the slide the puzzle piece over to prove you're real, or like select the lampposts from the Google check thing to prove you're not a bot, because ultimately, when you're scrolling through social and you only have a couple of seconds to grab someone's attention, what other signifiers are there? When it's something that's just from your phone that you can tell it's not AI generated, it's a lot more, it's just a lot better to prove that you're real, you know?
Well, that's a really good segue into creating like the imperfect stories or the imperfect videos. I remember when I first started recording, I would re-record and re-record probably like 20 times and just be memorizing script, and it was really not me at all. And I mean, clearly we
the hardest type of videos to do, by the way.
But we would be able to get into a studio and do this a bit more professionally, but we just quite like the comfort of our own homes.
Yeah.
And don't want to go anywhere. I mean, I haven't even set up my mic. I've got a proper mic. I realize that this isn't the best.
I've got tracksuit bottoms on under this. You lot will never see it.
I've got yoga pants.
You know how comfy I am right now, bro? It's crazy. But I know exactly what you mean. It's just like, with stuff like this, it's so much easier for us to just start and not think about it, be ourselves, and as it builds traction, we can then let it get professional, right?
One viewer turns into two.
Yep. Yeah, but that's how everyone should think about it. Just let it happen naturally, but just show up consistently. I'm not following my own advice here, FYI, people. I have not posted on LinkedIn in a year and a half, and I've dedicated today to put my post back on there and start creating video clips and things, because we have a lot from the show now and other things I'm working on. But I've actively avoided it because I wasn't in the right headspace. I just didn't want to be part of the LinkedIn community whatsoever. And from that little time out, I do see a lot of the foibles of the LinkedIn community, to use a funny word. But I just sometimes it is overly cringe. It's very like Facebook-y sometimes, and it makes me feel a little bit ill. But it does have some really good benefits. It's just me avoiding those posts of like, I got engaged, here's what it taught me about B2B sales. That meme, like I hate it. Like trying to turn everything into a sales post for a course is right. the thing that makes this platform shite, in my opinion. But also, it can be such a good platform for actually sharing and making so much good stuff. Sorry.
I was going to say, just before I forget, no, finish your thought. I'll remember.
No, it was literally just me rounding out the sentence. You go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Our ADHD didn't stop last year.
Nope.
So I was just thinking about, okay, so with those posts, the other thing I want to highlight, if I'm connecting with you on LinkedIn, I'm doing that because you either inspire me, I feel there's an alignment in who we are, and maybe there could be a partnership opportunity, or maybe there's a business opportunity. It is not a like social network or in any means because I want you to hit on me. I just want to be really clear on that, because I think that there's like, I don't know, increasingly blurred lines. I got like a kiss at the end of a message from like a business contact who was male, and that makes me feel awkward. And I had
I've
to
had
act,
several members of my team actively not participate or leave LinkedIn, or even friends who are female co-workers because they get harassed on LinkedIn, basically, or people try and hit them up on LinkedIn because they think it's the new Tinder, and it's just like, bro, chill out.
well, they're probably not trying to sell anything because I don't get hit up that often, but I still, okay, here's a big point. I've got a really friendly personality. And I think that people, unless told otherwise, should not take my friendship for or my friendly personality for anything other than genuine interest and, kindness. It's
Mm.
not because I'm romantically interested in you, and please refrain from being forward in your advances unless told otherwise. Is that fair?
I mean, yeah, the fact that you even have to say that is ridiculous. To be honest, it should be a given. But yes, it's more than fair, and it's just this is what I mean about LinkedIn becoming more Facebooky. And I know it's the kind of meme where, like, people often say it about the type of content people post, but it's also the type of people that operate on their platform that create really bad situations like that. So it's 100% a valid thing you've gone through there, and many others have to deal with on a daily basis. And I think LinkedIn does try its best to fight against it, but often, what can you do when people are people?
Mm. Well, so back to the imperfect stories, and how do you make sure that you're just sharing your most authentic self? I mean, I want to kind of go back a little bit, if you don't mind, on you weren't in the right headspace for social media. I mean, you're
Hmm.
a social media expert, and it's almost like you drank from the poison chalice. You are out there helping people, but then it kind of
Mm.
took its toll. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I was in a kind of full clinical burnout over like the last, I don't even know how long it was, but like it's been within the last 6 months. I think I've got my just physical energy back. That's how I'm kind of measuring it at the moment. But various things happen in business and personal life. You're down at your lowest point. The thought of engaging with the LinkedIn community was not on my highest protocol, so I just avoided it like the plague, essentially. I avoided looking at it, I avoided posting on it, I avoided engaging on it. Like, you probably wouldn't even see a comment of mine. I think I reshared something for a good friend of mine. That's the last post I did. And I used to upload videos weekly, just trying to help people as much as possible. But I wasn't trying to grow the business at that time. And I think I still look at my personal brand as the growth portal for my business. And I think a lot of service providers use personal brand to go through that. But yeah, it's very simple. It's like I just didn't. I wasn't. I was too cynical. I was in this mode of like, I'm not going to put anything good out, so I best not put anything out at all. And I just kind of sat and observed and recovered, basically, and focused back on myself. And a bit of a weird paradox, considering was still strategizing, helping other businesses with their social media while not caring about mine, which most agencies struggle to brand for themselves, apart from the extremely successful ones, and that's why they're the different ones. But yeah, it was just a really interesting place to be. It was very much like to use a Marvel reference, Red Skull at the end of I think it was Infinity War or Endgame, where he guides others to a treasure he cannot possess. It's not, but it wasn't my goal to be more of a content creator. But I think moving into that space, regardless of where you go, and being a content creator or just working on your personal brand is now the full circle conclusion I've come to anyway. Because regardless of if I choose to become, a zoologist in the next couple of years, or I continue to do what I do, me having a good personal brand helps with anything. So I'm just going to keep working on that, because many people theorize that your LinkedIn personal brand will become your new CV because of how crazy job markets are, basically. So your best hope is to get yourself headhunted by someone or so on and so forth for business stuff. So it's a very interesting place to be, but I have gone full circle into avoiding it completely to now thinking it's probably one of the most important things for me to work on.
Well, thank you for sharing because I know that, well, that just takes a lot of courage, right? To open up the kimono and kind of let people in to what has been going on. Yeah,
Mm,
figuratively speaking, of course, what's been going on for you and why you haven't been, because every like especially here locally in Southampton, but you were working with some really big brands.
mm,
And I think that, the whole authenticity piece of being vulnerable, that is one of the biggest parts of being authentic. And I think the other really important thing to consider is when you're authentic, the right people and the right opportunities will continue to gravitate towards you, and the wrong people and the wrong opportunities and wrong situations will fall away. You know those
mm.
you I'm sure we can all remember a role that we were thinking we really, really wanted, and then we didn't get it, and we were crushed, or we thought we weren't good enough, or but actually we were more aligned or better suited to something much better, or something that would help us grow in a way that we still needed to. So I'm really passionate about that. What about authenticity and how it fosters inclusion, especially for the neurodiverse? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's one of those things that it has to be safe to be who that person is for any neurodiversity to be fostered in a positive way without it being masked. I think most neurodivergence, depending on how far you are on certain scales, will have to mask to a certain extent just to be societally functional. Especially when you're on the latter end of the autism scale, or even with ADHD, containing if you have the hyperactivity side of things, or even the forgetful side of things, which I know can be. Or the disorganizational side for women with ADHD, which I know can be a real struggle. A corporate environment is the kind of worst pressure cooker for behaving yourself, being organised, being on time, being prompt, hitting your deadlines. It's like the worst environment ever for anyone who has that type of brain. So I think being able to have conversations about where you're at, masking to a point where it's not overboard, I think is another thing as well, where you have to just to get by, just the way society's set up. But one of the main reasons I burnt out so much is I was constantly had the corporate I can do everything hat on, and I just got to a point where I just could not handle it anymore, and I just became very disillusioned with the corporate makeup of the world in general, and I slunk away from it. I just got the basics set up, and I hid in a corner basically until I felt comfortable enough to come back out again. And I wouldn't want to see that happen to anyone else. So having those conversations or picking up on the signs as early as possible, I think it's definitely going to be always part of my leadership strategies. But it has to be something that leadership observes and opens up for and is comfortable with. And I think that's definitely got to be the first thing. Leadership, make people comfortable, have constant conversations, spot those signs. And there's probably many signs. I mean, what do you think?
Well, the masking that you mentioned, and obviously I took note of it, otherwise I would have forgotten. I that comes from a young age. Anybody, especially my generation, right? So I'm a generation before you, or more, and so I wasn't even. My mother had no idea that I had ADHD and now likely dyslexia, which she just thought I was a really bad student and very defiant and naughty, and
Mm,
these type of behavioral issues, that I had to definitely break out of. But had I learned more about my diagnosis when I was in corporate, which is really process oriented and very structured, and they've got management upon management just to keep the noise down. They're not even leaders. Sorry, but like
it's true.
a lot of them are just there to keep whipping the performers and keeping the noise down from the top. And I think that I hope I don't get in trouble, but I can't get in trouble. I mean, I
I
was
mean,
a
it's
really
the
high
stereotype.
performer there,
Yeah,
but
it's the corporate stereotype, isn't it? Like, that's how I imagine most corporates are set up, having only been in one. too.
Yeah. Well, and it's with the utmost respect because I loved the company when I worked there, but I was successful in spite of the difficulties I faced because I was neurodiverse. Now, if I'm thinking about how we can, what measurements, like if you are neurodiverse, I still speak to sales performers and managers who don't even disclose that they are to their leaders or their companies so that they can
Well,
get
you
some
can't,
kind.
especially in like when you're applying, because there's usually a box that says, "Do you consider yourself neurodivergent?"
But you don't have
And
to.
anyone
You
with
don't have to
common
tick
sense
it.
goes no, because find out later on. uh, it's a surprise.
Kinder Bueno.
Yeah, but like, because that's going to get you automatically disqualified in this job market, whether they
Wow.
say they're inclusive or not. You're like, why would I admit that? Like, because it's going to be seen negatively because that stigma is still around, whether people like it or not. But I think once you're in, and leaders, if they are neurotypical, it's sometimes very clear the differences between you and that other team member. It is a job of harness, do not hide. Like see that potential and look at it like, oh my god, I've got a jet engine here. I just have to make sure I point it in the right direction. Otherwise, everyone in here is going to be on fire. Like it's a jet engine,
That's
but
an
in a tiny
amazing
room.
that's an amazing analogy. I used to say that I was a Lamborghini and not a Toyota Corolla, but
Hmm.
it's a similar analogy. I really love that. And I think that I would love to hear from leaders and especially recruiters. So, because I'm not, I don't really believe in the whole traditional recruitment space and just looking at CVs but what percentage of people are recruited when they tick that neurodiverse box? I would be really interested to know.
It probably aligns with some kind of DEI quota, which is the negative side of, I think, of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it becomes a number to tick off, or do we have one in that department? No, best get one of the crazies in there. You know what I mean? It's like they probably have these really frank conversations behind the scenes maybe even from like a very high level thing. But it sounds like conspiracy talk at times, but when you think about it, let me make sure as an applicant, we've all done it. We've all had to make alterations to our CV or make sure, no, I could relocate. I'm never going to relocate. It's stuff like that. It's just when you're doing these applications, you're like, I better give myself the best chance, because you can be overly qualified for a role, but it could be a computer software that says, "Nah, you're not getting in," because it's scanning for certain things. If you don't
Right.
hit the scan criteria, you lose. So I'm never going to do something that's going to what might declassify me, even though on every corporate page will be something about how they don't discriminate against it. It's just like, yeah, sure thing, pal.
Oh my God, this is a whole nother episode, but in the last episode we talked about red monkeys and how red monkeys are the ones that are different and innovative and think differently
Mm.
and challenge the status quo, and how a lot of companies can go around unintentionally, you know, killing off their potential because
Mm.
they don't allow them to be their true selves. That's such a great topic. Okay, so then if we were to wrap up, so it sounds like you've got a task ahead of you this week
I do,
in
yeah.
relaunching your authentic brand, which James,
Mm.
by the way, just like I used to say none of my girlfriends aren't beautiful, and none of my none of my partners in like professional, like I only want to hang out with authentic awesome people. So you've definitely got
Thank
that
you.
box ticked, so that's a really exciting mission.
Yes, yeah, it should be good. And with video content like this, we've been doing this episode. Is this episode 6, 7?
7.
7. So we've got 7 of these in the bank. I've been recording another show with a good friend of mine. All of this is to optimize for clipping. So in the creator community, it's often called clip farming, where you're gonna focus on saying really good moments, or you're going to do something that is kind of attention grabbing, so you know that'll be clip farmed and used somewhere else. There's the negative side of it, which is often referred to as clip chimping in the live stream community, where someone will clip you out of context at the worst possible moment, whether you're talking about politics or something, to make you look like something you're not, spread that fake news, things like that. But ultimately, the clip economy is a major driver of all modern content creators right now. It's a game that no brand is really playing, because it's happening on the Twitch streaming side of things, YouTube live side of things. But those are the top creators at the moment. It used to be that YouTubers ruled the roost, but I'd say live streaming, Twitch, Kick, all those platforms, they are the cultural leaders at the moment. Those clips then fall onto TikTok, and then those TikTok clips eventually fall onto Facebook and Instagram. So there's these three layers. So if you're only on the Facebook and Instagram layer, you're quite late to the party. And I think if more brands and individual professionals start to realize that if I can just have an outlet, whether it's a vlog, podcast, standard videos, live streaming, whatever it is, if I have a vehicle to create consistent clips, to clip farm, then I can get my volume up and constantly try for viral moments or things that just spread my message on a consistent basis. And it proves that authenticity and humanity, because they're cut out of longer pieces of real pieces of content like the conversations we're having. So I entirely intend to clip this exact moment right now, and then I'll be able to, show you guys that later. And that will probably appear on LinkedIn, which will then hopefully make you watch the full show. That is how things work now. So brands, individuals, get on board with that. I'm going to be trying to do it all throughout 2025. Hopefully the rest of y'all can see some of the content through there and join us for future shows later.
Yeah, and just on that, can I just say, though, that I'm definitely not thinking about what kind of content I'm putting up there in terms of, is it going to be clickbait or not? But so if you love what we're doing, then please like and follow and tell us what you'd like to see more of, because we're really excited by this. And yeah, so thanks for watching, and see you soon.
See you
Happy
soon,
New
guys.
Year.
Happy New Year. I forgot about that. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.